Hi, my name's Gary Shuckford, and I'm talking about, for the next 10 minutes or so, the power of the ecosystem. And the reason I mention that is the last few days have been fantastic to hear all the use cases, the stories, the ideas, people's capability. And when you look at all of these ideas, how do you get them to be adopted more successfully? How do you drive innovation? A lot of the answers come down to creating an ecosystem. And when you look at the work of MIT in the States and Silicon Valley, a lot of the success of creating those commercial ecosystems is having a stakeholder group involving entrepreneurs, risk capital, corporate, government, universities. And outside some of the work from MIT, I think this conference and symposium is one of the best examples I've seen of bringing together different components of that for cumulative gain. So I'm talking about three things. My background is mostly healthcare, so some of the benefit and use cases of using digital technology in healthcare, some of the challenges to innovation adoption, and the opportunity we've got to work together to drive innovation. And very quickly, I'm a visiting professor at the Lead Sustainability Institute at Shuckford University. Spent 25 years as Group Operations Director scaling up a company that looks after 40 million primary care records, so clinical management systems. And for the last 5 years I've been what they call an angel investor, so I've attended hundreds of Dragon Den type sessions of how do you scale businesses, who do you invest in, etc, etc. And if you look at the healthcare challenges, the reason I find it interesting, its annual budget at the moment this year is 134 billion. My calculator can't cope with the number of zeros that is. We're dealing with an increasing elderly population. So since I've been born, the population of the UK has already increased by over 10 million. Life expectancy has now gone up to 81. But importantly, our healthy state life expectancy is about 65 by the time at which you can start to expect things to go wrong. And in actual fact, what's interesting, I don't want to depress you, but what's interesting is actually, depending on where you live, that can vary by 19 years. So the health inequalities in the UK alone are absolutely phenomenal. And when you look at the evolving healthcare needs, as we're getting older, we're not necessarily becoming healthier, we're just living longer with more conditions. So under the age of 65, you've got a 14% chance of suffering from a long-term condition such as diabetes or asthma or cardiovascular disease, but it increases to 58% over the age of 60 and increases as you get older to the point where we end up with multiple long-term conditions. And when you look at the physical estate, the backlog maintenance of high and significant risk is already over 3 billion, so it's a big ticket item. And when you look at the annual cost to the UK economy of 100 billion because of worklessness and sickness, a lot of that's got to do with the physical estate. So when you look at Leeds, which is the headquarters of the NHS, some of their real estate, some of the offices and facilities they work in are some of the best that you can see. And you think, well, how come commercial companies can't afford that? And when you ask them, the reason is because the sickness levels are so bad when they're not in the best environment. So when they're in the best location and the best environment, people come to work. So the reason a lot of public sector own some of the best real estate is because of the impact of this in terms of the built environment. And it affects us all because another factor is over the age of 65. 1 in 3 people in this room are likely to suffer from dementia, and that ranges from memory loss to forgetting your name, to forgetting other people's name, to forgetting how to speak, to losing bowel control. So unfortunately the healthcare thing is something that will impact on everyone, so it's quite important that we're engaged with that. And when you look at the explosion, the Internet of Things, it's crazy and it's off the charts. And going back a few years, you start having lots of big data. So for example, this is a nursing home that's monitoring the movement of a person throughout that room, and it's great. And you think, well, that's great, you've just got loads of data, but like, so what, and what does it mean? So 10 years ago in the other company, my previous role, we worked with the university department to say, well, we've got all this data, but what can we do with it? And this is the sort of thing you can do to put some predictive analytics in. So this is something we released about 10 years ago. So what we did is looked at patients that were diabetic, and then rolled the clinical record back before they were diabetic, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, to look at what are the correlating indicators. So this is now used by most GP practices. And you can go online and use this tool to say, what is my personal chance of suffering from diabetes in the next 10 years? So that means that a clinician now can have a discussion with a patient to say, look, at this moment, because of your lifestyle and health and well-being, or lack of it, you have, let's say, a 70% chance of becoming diabetic, and this is what living with diabetes is like. But actually, if you stop smoking and you reduce your weight and you have this other intervention, this is actually the impact you can have to your chance of suffering from that long-term condition. So you can start taking preventive action to prevent suffering from these long-term conditions. And again, actually, it was 11 years ago we created another scoring system called Q-Risk that looks at the chance of suffering from cardiovascular disease and the prescribing of statins. And 11 years ago, the British Medical Journal picked up and said that one algorithm, if adopted nationally, would save 200,000 lives, 20,000 lives a year. So in the old company, we would save 20,000 lives a year just by one little algorithm, just by looking at that big data analytics and doing some clever stuff with it. And when you look at technology now moving, if you say 1 in 3 people, so as we engage with our healthcare estate, as we're older, we have visual impairment, we've now got technology so that designers of the physical estate can use virtual reality to say, well, actually, as we're getting older, how's that older population can engage with the environment and our physical estate? So now I can actually look at what it looks like to look at the environment from someone that suffers from different conditions to make sure that environment is more inclusive to means that when I go into a healthcare environment, I can navigate around it more successfully, that I'm not going to be stuck at home because I'm too embarrassed or I don't want to get lost. I can actually engage with the environment. And if you look at the top right-hand corner, a couple of years ago I invested in an architect's practice that did estates optimisation and healthcare design, and I was surprised that just the entranceway to an acute trust, there were at least 17 different design cues that they needed to design just the entrance doorway for people suffering from dementia and visual impairment. And it was fascinating to look at how important it is to design our physical estate, cognizant of the conditions that we suffer from as we get older. And when you look at some of the interesting technology at the moment, we've got contact lenses that can automatically change. So as you get older and your lens flexes differently, it can automatically adopt you retain sight. There's a child there with a sensor, so it can actually pick up breathing rates, so it can say, take your inhaler now before it becomes a problem. You've got medication there, so if someone suffers from cystic fibrosis, you've got £200,000 to £300,000 worth of medication a year, which is really expensive, and compliance is really important. So there's technology now to say, has the patient, where is it? And is the patient ingesting it? And is that consistent with the care pathway the patient should be following? This is, I think, fantastic for diabetics. It's a sensor that goes onto the arm that monitors blood glucose. Instead of doing fingerprint, it actually tells you real time what the blood sugar level is. And here's some of the company I've invested in called OxyHealth that has a passive camera in a mental health and dementia care facility that passively measures pulse, breathing, movement. So it knows in the middle of the night, has the patient died? Have they got up? Have they been wandering around? Has their breathing reduced? Has their blood pressure reduced? It's fascinating technology. So with all of this, it's great, but what strikes me is, well, why isn't everyone using it all the time? And there's a number of key challenges. And one of the challenges is a slide that's not very good blown up, but a lot of this stuff, as you see, you start with, a lot of the solutions involve smart modules, so SIM cards and sensors and bits of stuff that measure stuff. But on its own, it doesn't do anything. So usually these things go into objects like vending machines, meters, cars, cameras, other bits of technology. But on their own, they don't really do anything, because actually what it does is provide data, but then you need the connectivity of how do you mobilise that data to do different stuff. And then you've got to move on and say, well, actually, what do you do with the data and where does it go to and who's going to do what with it? Does it need to be shared and aggregated? And generally, depending on the customer, you need a whole raft of solutions to pull it together so it's actually useful for the airport or a care home facility. And then it moves on and it moves on. So actually what you've got is a very complex, fragmented market that's evolving. So you've got lots of siloed systems. So even at home, I've got 3 lighting control systems for a house. And I've got 4 different mechanisms to play sound in different rooms, which is crazy. And that's a small house, let alone a big, complex industrial environment. And also, when you look at the real life, I mean, digitising healthcare is great, but no one wants to talk to a robot. And in essence, with all the data and all the automisation, fundamentally, people get in the way. People want to be in control and feel that they're in control. And even with the digitisation of healthcare, 70% of patients in the UK say they're happy to engage with digital e-consults and all the other bits, but you've got to recognise that there's some use cases where actually it's not really appropriate or it kind of gets in the way. And also, one of the things we found scaling up digital technology in the healthcare market, and the phrase that served us well is 80% of the successful delivery of the IT package has got nothing to do with the IT. It's all the other human softer issues. So, and there's also other challenges, because actually if you're a company and a startup in that, and you've got some great ideas, or an academic, how do you bring them to the market? And this is where I'm coming from. So I've seen loads of angel investor sessions, and the big thing I see is you've got people that have a great idea and a great product. And it's like, yeah, great, but so what? Tell me the customer story. Why should they buy it? And you've got lots of inventors and founder syndrome, or lots of people on their own have got great capability, but not necessarily haven't got the skill set to grow a successful company. And some of those people in a big complex market actually don't understand the market and the complexities of it. So it goes down to how do you gain risk capital, how do you get the right people, how do you scale it up, how do you deal with the cost of risk and innovation. And a lot of the answers to this is plugging into an ecosystem. So on a personal basis, there's a couple of companies I'm supporting at the moment. So for primary care, so during January, February, they're predicting lots of snow. And primary care and emergency departments are likely to suffer as a result of it. So we've created a primary care dashboard, so for GP practice we know what the waiting times are, can you get an appointment, can you not, what are patients coming in for. Just investing in a company now does the same for emergency departments. You think, well actually that's great, so you can see what are patients coming in for, is there enough resource, if there's not, what needs to be done. But then you think if you do need more clinical resource, what about the physical environment and the assets and the facilities? So look at how do we digitise so we can have a real-time dashboard at city-wide or trust level or national level to say what are people coming in for, are the trains going up and down, what's the service delivery capability and what's the physical estate suitability, so that people can move these assets around to make sure that during a winter crisis that we've got a more resilient healthcare system. And very quickly, it's an opportunity finally for us to work together to help drive innovation in this area in terms of market engagement and problem solving, because having technology is great, but if you're not solving a problem for a customer, it doesn't mean anything. And bringing together innovators and connections. So for example, universities, we've heard of an organisation this morning that can make meeting rooms available for conferences and exhibitions and meeting rooms and hubs and working space so that academics and companies and city leaders can come together to share that skill and capability. We've already got with the collective, that sounds a bit Borg-like, but the Star Trek collective has the ability to provide any technology stacked together to be able to solve any of those problems. And we've got through a number of us different routes to market and distribution channels and the ability to scale and the ability to provide risk capital to help support companies in that growth curve. And finally, here's a list of contact details, and this is being circulated of some of that collective that you might want to engage with. So our challenge is if you've got a problem or you think if only we just had a solution that does this, or why aren't we doing this, or I think I can contribute, then please talk to us. And I must say, I think this event's been fantastic for the last couple of days, and see more stuff like this, either formal or informal, would be fantastic. So thank you very much.